Long before the pyramids cast their shadows across the sands of Egypt, long before Greek temples crowned marble hills or Roman roads stitched an empire together, the first civilization stirred. It rose in a land whose name, given by the Greeks, meant simply, between the rivers. Here, in the fertile floodplains of the Tigris and Euphrates, stretching from the highlands of Anatolia to the Persian Gulf, the story of humanity changed forever. It was on these plains, today's Iraq, that people first gathered in true cities, etched the first written words, built monuments to the gods, and sought order in the chaos of nature. This history spans nearly 10,000 years, beginning with the retreat of the Ice Age around 10,000 BCE and culminating in 539 BCE, when Cyrus the Great of Persia marched into Babylon. Kings rose and fell, ziggurats pierced the sky, clay tablets outlasted empires, and with them, the very foundations of organized society were laid. This is the story of Mesopotamia, the story of civilization itself. As the glaciers of the last ice age melted, Southwest Asia began to bloom. In the hills above the Tigris and Euphrates, small groups of hunter-gatherers discovered something remarkable: wild wheat and barley growing in abundance. For generations, their lives had been mobile, following herds and seasons. But now they lingered. Clusters of reed and mud huts appeared at sites like Abu Huraira and Tel Miribit. They still hunted gazelles and gathered nuts, but year after year, they returned. In the Jordan Valley, one of these settlements became something unprecedented: Jericho. 11,000 years ago, its people built stone walls, perhaps the world's first fortifications, and even a mysterious tower whose purpose archaeologists still debate. Farther north, at Çatalhöyük in Anatolia, homes were packed so tightly that there were no streets. People climbed across rooftops, entering their homes through holes in the ceiling. But the true revolution was taking root in the soil. By selecting stronger grains with bigger seeds, humans transformed wild grasses into crops. Wheat, barley, and lentils were deliberately grown. At the same time, wild animals were domesticated: sheep, goats, pigs, and the formidable aurochs, ancestor of cattle. This was the agricultural revolution. For the first time, people produced more food than they needed. Surpluses gave rise to new roles: potters, weavers, and toolmakers. Around the 6th millennium BCE, pottery itself transformed storage and cooking. Fired clay jars kept food dry, safe, and portable. But the low plains between the rivers posed a challenge: little rainfall. Survival depended on harnessing the floods of the Tigris and Euphrates. Digging channels to redirect water was the birth of irrigation. By the 5th millennium BCE, villages swelled into larger towns like Eridu and Uruk. Irrigation meant cooperation. Cooperation meant leadership. Shrines evolved into temples, priests gained power, and society grew more hierarchical. Meanwhile, copper shimmered in jewelry and tools. By 3000 BCE, copper mixed with tin produced bronze, stronger, sharper, more durable. The Bronze Age had arrived. Trade expanded: obsidian from Anatolia, lapis from Afghanistan, shells from the Gulf. To record all this exchange, small clay tokens evolved into marks pressed into tablets. At first, pictographs, simple drawings of sheep or grain. But gradually, these marks represented sounds. Writing was born. The world's first true cities were about to rise. In the southern floodplains, the Sumerians built something entirely new: cities. By 3000 BCE, Uruk was the greatest of them all. Its white temple gleamed on a high platform, a prototype of the ziggurat. Tens of thousands lived within its walls, working as farmers, weavers, merchants, soldiers, and scribes. Other city-states, Eridu, Kish, Lagash, Ur, each had their own ruler, god, and armies. They were fiercely independent and often at war. Kingship began here. At first, councils of elders ruled, but priests who controlled temple resources grew powerful, and during crises, temporary war leaders, the Lugals, or big men, often kept their power. Soon, kingship became permanent. Their tombs testify to their wealth and authority: golden jewelry, lapis-studded lyres, even sacrificed servants buried beside their rulers. Religion permeated life. Each city had its patron deity: Enki of Eridu, Inanna of Uruk. Temples were built as their earthly homes, where priests performed rituals to keep the gods satisfied, lest floods or famines strike. Sumer's greatest gift, though, was writing. By 2500 BCE, pictographs had evolved into abstract cuneiform signs, written with reed styluses in wet clay. Scribes trained for years, mastering over 600 symbols. They recorded laws, trade, hymns, and myths. Among these stories, the Epic of Gilgamesh. It tells of a king of Uruk who seeks immortality after the death of his friend, only to learn that mortality is humanity's fate. The oldest epic poem in the world. Mathematics advanced too. Sumerians used a base 60 system, which is why we still have 60 seconds in a minute and 360 degrees in a circle. But rivalry consumed the Sumerians. City fought city over water rights and fertile land. Around 2500 BCE, King Lugal-Zaggisi briefly united Sumer, but his triumph would not last. From the north, a man named Sargon was rising. Sargon of Akkad, his origins are legend. A gardener's son, or perhaps a foundling, set adrift in a basket on the river. What's certain is that he rose from obscurity to serve the king of Kish, then overthrew him. From Kish, Sargon conquered Sumer, defeated Lugal-Zaggisi, and created something revolutionary. An empire. Instead of letting city rulers remain in power, he replaced them with his own governors, often family members. His realm stretched from the Persian Gulf to the Mediterranean. He built the world's first standing army, 5,400 men who ate bread before him daily. Trade and security flourished. Akkadian became the language of administration. His grandson Naram-Sin took the empire to its height, declaring himself a god. On his stele, he towers above soldiers, wearing the horned crown of divinity. But ruling such vast lands was fragile. Rebellions flared, governors grew independent, and nomadic Gutians from the Zagros Mountains invaded. By 2154 BCE, the empire collapsed. But the idea of empire, one ruler over many peoples, would endure forever. After the Gutian chaos, Sumerian cities revived. Leaders like Gudea of Lagash built temples and statues, emphasizing piety over conquest. But a new dynasty at Ur, founded by Ur-Nammu, restored central power. Ur-Nammu issued the earliest known law code, centuries before Hammurabi: fines for crimes instead of vengeance, protections for widows and orphans, even traffic laws for canals. He and his successors built monumental ziggurats, including the Great Step Pyramid of Ur, rising 30 meters above the plain. His son, Shulgi, ruled for 48 years, standardizing weights, measures, and calendars, reorganizing scribal schools, and even declaring himself divine. This Neo-Sumerian empire flourished in art, literature, and trade. But environmental decline, salinization of farmland, drought, and external invasions undermined it. By 2004 BCE, the Elamites from Iran stormed Ur. The dynasty fell, its ziggurat desecrated. Yet Sumer's cultural legacy endured. In the centuries after Ur's fall, new powers rose. Among them, a once small town called Babylon. Around 1894 BCE, Amorite tribes settled here, making it their capital. Its greatest king was Hammurabi. Ruling from 1792 BCE, he first secured his city, then conquered rivals until Babylon ruled all Mesopotamia. He presented himself not as a radical conqueror, but as a shepherd, restoring tradition. His most famous legacy, the Code of Hammurabi. 282 laws carved into stone beneath an image of the king receiving authority from Shamash, the sun god. The code covered trade, property, family, and justice. An eye for an eye among equals, but monetary compensation between classes. It emphasized protecting widows and orphans, preventing the strong from oppressing the weak. Hammurabi was also a micromanager. Surviving letters show him dictating everything from irrigation to priestly duties. After his death in 1750 BCE, Babylon weakened. In 1595 BCE, Hittites from Anatolia stormed the city, then withdrew. In their wake, a new dynasty rose, the Kassites. The Kassites, mountain people from the Zagros, ruled Babylon for 400 years, the longest dynasty in its history. Unlike conquerors before them, they embraced Babylonian culture, preserving religion and language. Their era coincided with a new international system, the Club of Great Powers. Alongside Egypt, the Hittites and Mitanni, Babylon corresponded in Akkadian, exchanged princesses and traded gifts. They introduced Kuduru stones, inscribed boundary markers granting land to nobles. Scholars compiled lists, encyclopedias of gods, stars, and medicines. Astronomers refined celestial observations, slowly shaping the zodiac. Art flourished, cylinder seals grew intricate, glass-making advanced. Babylon thrived as a cultural hub, even as Assyria to the north grew aggressive. By the late 12th century BCE, crisis struck. The Bronze Age collapse swept the region. Trade routes shattered, cities fell. Babylon endured until 1155 BCE, when Elamite invaders carried off Hammurabi's stele. A native dynasty briefly revived Babylonian pride, but Mesopotamia would soon face an iron-fisted power. In the north, the Assyrians transformed from traders to warriors. Centered on the city of Ashur, they built a machine of conquest. By the 9th century BCE, rulers like Ashur-nasir-pal II and Shalmaneser III expanded relentlessly. Iron weapons, siege engines, cavalry, and ruthless terror made their army unstoppable. Cities that resisted were destroyed, populations deported. Reliefs boast of flaying and impalement, propaganda of fear. Under Tiglath-Pileser III in the 8th century BCE, Assyria became a true empire, reorganizing provinces and centralizing power. His successors, Sargon II, Sennacherib, Esarhaddon, Ashurbanipal, conquered lands from Iran to Egypt. Sennacherib destroyed Babylon, shocking the world. His son Esarhaddon rebuilt it, realizing ideology mattered as much as force. Ashurbanipal built the Library of Nineveh, collecting over 30,000 tablets, including Gilgamesh, hymns, medicine, and astronomy. But the empire was overstretched. After Ashurbanipal's death, revolts erupted. In 612 BCE, a coalition of Babylonians and Medes destroyed Nineveh. By 609 BCE, Assyria was gone, its empire consumed by those it once terrorized. From Assyria's ashes, Babylon rose once more under Nabopolassar and his son, Nebuchadnezzar II. Nebuchadnezzar conquered Jerusalem, exiling its elite. He then transformed Babylon into the greatest city of its age. Its walls were colossal, its processional way lined with lions and dragons, its Ishtar gate dazzling in blue-glazed bricks. At its center rose the ziggurat Etmonanki, 90 meters tall, perhaps inspiring the story of the Tower of Babel. Greek writers later spoke of the Hanging Gardens, one of the seven wonders, though their existence remains debated. Nebuchadnezzar's Babylon was both political and religious theater. Each new year, the king knelt before Marduk's statue, his crown stripped to show even he ruled only by divine favor. Astronomy reached new heights. Scholars predicted eclipses with mathematical models. Banking families financed trade. Literature flourished. But after Nebuchadnezzar's death in 562 BCE, instability grew. His successors were weak. The last king, Nabonidus, alienated priests by favoring the moon god Sin over Marduk, and by leaving Babylon for a decade. In 539 BCE, Babylon fell. Not in flames, but almost peacefully, to a new kind of conqueror, Cyrus of Persia. Cyrus the Great entered Babylon as a liberator, not a destroyer. His Cyrus cylinder declared he had been chosen by Marduk to restore justice. Unlike Assyrian brutality, Persian rule respected local traditions. Exiles were allowed to return home, including the Jews who rebuilt their temple in Jerusalem. Babylon remained prosperous, but now as part of a far larger empire stretching from the Indus to the Mediterranean. Its independence was gone, but its culture endured under Persian protection. Persians ruled for 2 centuries until Alexander the Great defeated them in 331 BCE. He planned to make Babylon his capital but died there in 323 BCE. His generals abandoned it for Seleucia, a new Hellenistic city. Greek and Mesopotamian traditions blended. Astronomy and philosophy cross-pollinated. Temples still functioned, but cuneiform slowly faded. The last cuneiform text was written in the 1st century CE. Later, Parthians and Sasanian Persians controlled the land. Religions like Judaism, Christianity, and Manichaeism flourished alongside ancient cults. Babylon's Jewish community produced the Talmud. Finally, in the 7th century CE, Arab Muslim armies swept through. Mesopotamian gods and writing were long gone, but irrigation systems, astronomy, and cultural memory lived on. Baghdad, founded in 762 CE, rose near Babylon's ruins, continuing the pattern of new empires building upon the old. From the first farmer sowing wild wheat to Nebuchadnezzar's towering ziggurat, Mesopotamia shaped civilization itself. It gave us writing, the city, the law, the calendar. It measured time in 60s, traced the stars, and imagined humanity's place in the cosmos. Its myths, of floods, towers, and quests for immortality, echo in the Bible and beyond. Though its ziggurats crumble and its language is silent, its legacy lives in every written word, every city street, every clock that ticks 60 seconds. The rivers still flow. And in their waters, the reflections of the world's first civilization still shimmer.